Hey everybody, my name is Mike Mahaffey. I'm a second-degree black belt under Chris Hodder in combat base out of Magic BJJ in Lansing, Michigan, and known as the old bastard guy from BJJ Metal Models. So thanks for having me on.
Awesome. What's up, y'all? My name's Jeff Shaw. I'm a black belt. I own and I'm the head instructor at Bellingham BJJ in beautiful Bellingham, Washington, the center of the known world. My pet peeves are people who frown and fascists.
Wow. Hey, everybody. I'm Jesse Walker. I'm also a black belt. I'm the head coach and owner of Rough Hands BJJ in Louisville, Kentucky.
And I'm Stephan Kesting. I've been doing martial arts for 42 years, fourth degree black belt in jiu-jitsu, owner of Grapplearts. And just in case this is the first time that you're being exposed to this, this is essentially where jiu-jitsu black belts are trying to convince you that not everybody in jiu-jitsu is absolutely crazy and that some of us aren't actually fans of raving fascism. So, Jeff, I know that your wife's getting Irish citizenship and you've been to Ireland a whole lot of times. So how do you feel about President-to-be Conor McGregor?
You want to know what's funny is the two least popular things in Ireland are the English and Conor McGregor. At least that's in my experience. And it was super funny. One of my black belts, my second black belt I've ever promoted, went to Ireland for the first time, had an amazing time. It's a spectacular country. The people are incredible, incredibly rich culture, great, like love Ireland. And Pat came back and I was like, man, what was your impression? He's like, they really hate Conor.
Why do they hate Conor?
Well, so I think like, and look, I'm not an expert. I'm not, and I'm an American of Irish descent, not an Irish person, but like there is something I think in the Irish character that does not like calling attention to yourself in a negative way through self-aggrandizement, and they don't like you kind of making everybody else look bad. And I think when Connor first burst onto the scene, I think he was extremely popular because super talented guy from a small country, a lot of pride there, and then everything that came after, I think, kind of poisoned the well. And one of my friends, so he went and visited the White House, and there was a Connor did, not one of my friends, and there was a picture of Connor next to the U.S. president. And my friend who runs this MMA website, he had this picture and he had this like caption, sort of musing about like, I wonder what they talked about. I wonder what led to this. I wonder what they had in common. And I was like, well, they've both been found guilty of sexual assault, so there's that. We could start there. Certainly, the dozens of credible accusations and multiple convictions. So yeah, it's an interesting thing. And like I think what it teaches me, we a theme that we see over and over again in the martial arts is people that are supremely talented, all-time greats in the martial art, are A, not always good human beings, and B, if they start out as good human beings, there's a lot of things that can happen along the way that can turn you into like to say self-parody would be kind, but I think we'll go with self-parody as regards Connor.
So what is in it for the White House? Why would the White House bring Conor McGregor? Is it just red meat to their base?
I mean, I have an answer, and I have a short answer and I have a long answer. And the short answer is it brings theatrical credibility, specifically among, yes, the base, which they're really going after this perception of masculinity and masculinism. And as a man who's been a man my whole life, it really pisses me off. And I've been meaning to make some videos about this, about how like there are many, many different ways to be a man, and like what the essence of manhood is really kind of up to the individual and the culture. But like it pisses me off that these folks' idea of manhood is just, I am violent. If an old man in a bar talks mess to me, I'm going to hit that old man, which Connor, who was the UFC champion, did. And I think that for people that are authoritarian, putting out this image of I am dangerous to you, both in a literal sense, from physical danger, as well as like sending my boys after you danger, but also like just that figurative looming danger. And I think it's just a mention. I think that's part of it. I think there's also a theatrical nature of it. Trump has always been involved in professional wrestling. Not always, but for decades has been involved in professional wrestling, WWE Hall of Famer. The UFC evolved from what it started as to essentially theatrics, right? Theatrics of blood sport, where this is why, instead of like the distinction I always make to the new students about what the early UFCs were versus the modern UFCs is the early UFCs were about effectiveness and the modern UFCs are about entertainment. And those are not always the same thing. If you look at the Hoist Gracie Dan Severn match, one of the most educational and illustrative fights of all time about what's actually effective in single combat. And modern MMA fans would not watch it, because it is not entertaining. And so I think the spectacle of Conor, who even, whether Conor was winning fights or losing fights, whether Conor was even fighting, because he hasn't fought in more than 4 years, even when he's injured, he is a spectacle, and he brings that spectacle and he brings that volubility. He's really, let's just be honest, even those of us that have some antipathy towards Conor, the dude is hilarious. He is offensive, but he can cut a promo rivaling The Rock or Stone Cold Steve Austin. And so I think there's that element of toxic masculinity and entertainment that is the intersection of what these folks are interested in.
Well, yeah, I mean, he has shown that what he does is really a winning formula, right? I mean, he has put eyeballs on the UFC like no other figure before him. And that started bleeding into all these other combat sports. In my opinion, all of Gordon Ryan's nonsense is a direct descendant of what we saw out of Conor McGregor. And with him being at the White House, I really see, certainly from those in power, an attempted return to this imperial might makes right kind of mentality that I think dovetails right into what Jeff was talking about with the idea of masculinity, the my dad can beat up your dad kind of bullshit. And they're trying to get us right back there.
And there's so many people in combat sports that I'm seeing that are buying into that, right? Like it's
for sure.
It's this direct pipeline from that image to that's who I'm going to identify with in terms of my politics to, oh, now I'm a fascist. I mean, it's disgusting in my opinion. I've been a like Stephan, I mean, I've been a martial artist for 38 years now. And that's never what I want it to be about. So I'm glad that we're having conversations like this, and I'm grateful for folks like you guys.
Well, part of this plan, in as much as there is a plan, is to provide examples within the community of people who aren't embracing fascism, and also just to take up space. Because all the research shows, you can have the politics of grievance. The right wing, we the fascists, are the most repressed group of individuals. Yet, Fox News is bigger than MSN. It's bigger than CNN. It's gigantic. And if you take a look at the podcastosphere and the influencer sphere, by the time you get Joe Rogan and Theo Vaughn and all these other, Ben Shapiro and all these other people, it takes up massively more space than anything in the center of the left, right? For each one David Pakman, there's 4 people spewing, in my opinion, complete nonsense.
Yeah, agreed. They're winning by being louder.
And amplified. There's a lot more money. Rupert Murdoch and Elon Musk have got a lot more money and a lot more share of the attention. I mean, yeah, George Soros was a big donor, and I think he was the number 1 donor for a while. But then out of the next 15 donors, I think 1 or 2 were progressive and something like 12 Republican and right wing. And now you throw Elon Musk in there, and he's 20 times richer than George Soros ever was, and owns Twitter. Soros did not own Facebook. Soros did not own Blue Sky. He didn't have an algorithm. I used to go on Twitter a little bit, and I'm a little bit sad that it's gone. But it's incredibly important in journalism and politics. It's disproportionately powerful there. So having control over that thing, that's worth... So Elon put $277 million into this election. But how much is his fanboy army worth? That's got to be worth another 50 million or 100 million. And then how much is control of Twitter worth? That's got to be worth another couple 100 million. So really,
he sold it to himself this week. We have to remember that.
That's true. Okay, so we can put an exact value on it. $33 million. If you put all of Twitter. Yeah, sorry, billion. Yeah, you're right.
I want to get back to something Jesse said about the might makes right attitude. And that is one of the things that I think really disturbs me, both with the overreach of the current administration, but just the way things have been going for years. I don't think everybody has to agree with me. In fact, not everybody should agree with me. That's, diversity in opinion, diversity in viewpoint, diversity in background. It's what makes a healthy society and a healthy information ecosystem. And it's why I'm such a believer in a constitutional republic where we define, hey, we have these fundamental rights. I wouldn't take yours away. You shouldn't take mine away. Freedom of speech, freedom of expression, freedom of religion, things of that nature. And within those confines, we can sort of debate about what the good society looks like. The thing that really disturbs me is we're getting at fundamental notions of what do we owe to each other. And if the answer is nothing, then what are we even doing here? And so I do see in the media and politics, this might makes right coming through consistently because, okay, who gets the right to have an information ecosystem all their own? Well, if you have $40 billion and you can spend $40 billion, congratulations, you can have Twitter, and now you can propagandize to an audience. Okay, well, obviously there's only one, maybe two human beings that are in that position. And so it's part of why I think that the internet should be regulated as a public utility, as a public good, because it is media and everyone needs access to information. And, the market economy is great. The market economy does a lot of wonderful things. It's terrific at creating wealth. It's awful at distributing wealth, but it's good at creating wealth. The thing is, if I like Fruit Loops and you like Crunch Berries and you like Rice Krispies, I'm just going to name my favorite childhood cereals because we got to bring some levity to this situation. But if your favorite cereal manufacturer goes out of business, sucks for you. You still have plenty of cereals to choose from. If information becomes monopolized, democracy doesn't work, and that's and so for me there's both like a philosophical, I hate using words like that, but there's an ethics piece of like, hey, share, be good to each other, and then there is a structure piece of like, okay, we're going to build a society where the richest guy in the world can't buy the media, twice or however many times, and so that's what. Like we're at a stage in America, and unfortunately, I think the things that happen in America spill over onto the rest of the world. We're at a situation in America where a lot of our safeguards have failed, and that's wrong. They haven't failed. They've been attacked and they've been destroyed. And so we have the media, which is supposed to be a watchdog, and the minds have been poisoned against the media, and media has been bought. Now we have the courts, and now you have the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, saying we might defund federal courts that disagree with us, which is madness.
Get rid of the whole district.
Crazy. It is literal fascism, and these are things that are unacceptable in America. And now, like, or they should be. And like these are the kind of things that would have been unthinkable 5 years ago, maybe 5 months ago. These things would have been unthinkable. And so at this point, what we need people of conscience to stand up. We need a lot of folk to get involved because this affects all of us. And I'm talking about all of us, not just in America, right? But Canadians like Stephan and, Greenlanders who, God bless the Greenlanders, standing up and saying that you're not for sale. But yeah, I mean, we're at the point where the last few safeguards, we're seeing whether they're going to hold. And I hope they do.
Something else that occurred to me, it's conversations that we've all kind of had offline. I know Stephan and I have talked about it some. I think one of the reasons we're seeing martial arts schools and maybe even jiu-jitsu schools in particular being so susceptible to this ideology and kind of a hotbed of this stuff is, especially in jiu-jitsu, right? This whole concept of might makes right has been just fundamental, right? He's the black belt because he can beat up everybody in the room. And that's kind of how the hierarchy has been defined in so many schools for so long. So they're already operating like this. So then to see what's happening inside the school start to happen out in the real world, it feels perfectly natural and okay to them.
Right. And, I think to Stephan's point earlier, to piggyback on what you said, I mean, there are people out there who don't operate like that. Like the four of us in this chat aren't operating like that. And, Stephan, we've all quote unquote grown up on some of Stephan's jiu-jitsu material. And
God help you.
I know, right? I'm so screwed. Stephan has been somebody who for years has been speaking out against operating like that idea that because you are a black belt, then you have authority over anything other than pajama wrestling, right? And I mean, that's something that I think we need to speak out. That's a root cause, in my opinion, of what you said, Jesse, why schools, martial arts schools, are so susceptible to this. And I think we all need to speak out against that. Like, I refuse to be called professor. I always tell people, just call me Mike, And I had a conversation yesterday after class with somebody who was asking advice about something. And I told them, I said, hey, ask me about jiu-jitsu or social work, because those are the two things that I have fair amount of expertise in. Don't ask me about supplements or how to fix your car or relationship advice. Like,
Or stock
and
pick.
I think we exactly. And I think something we can do as leaders in that community is just really amplify that idea. Just because we know how to tie somebody in a knot doesn't mean that we're experts on everything else. And you shouldn't put somebody in that strongman position, in that one-up position over you.
Well,
It is
even more
shocking
than that.
how many of the
No. Please go ahead, Stephan.
it is shocking how many of the big names and big influencers in this sport have swung hard right. I mean, Gordon Ryan has been hard right for years now. We take a look at Hensel Gracie amplifying Marjorie Jewish space lasers green recently by talking about how she's a legend and then reposting a video of her refusing to answer a reporter's question about the operational security leak with Pete Hegseth and all the rest of those clowns, by attacking the UK on its immigration policy and then refusing to answer the question. And she's a legend because she can do it. And then we have Joe Rogan, right, who in his defense hasn't been going to Canada for UFCs for a while. I think that started, I could be wrong, with vaccination requirements in the mid-COVID era, but now saying he'd rather go to Russia. And maybe he was joking, but I think it was joking ha-ha, right? So he's yet another one of the long line of far-right influencers who's now admiring Vladimir Putin and also has gone completely, fully anti-vax, not just mRNA vaccines. Now in his interview with Suzanne Humphreys, I mean, the number of lies per minute that doctor told, from polio being caused by toxins in the environment and not by the polio virus. Or if you drop a vaccine syringe on the floor of a vaccination clinic, you have to call the hazmat team. I'm on the hazmat team. We've cleaned up thermometers of like actual liquid elemental mercury. First of all, almost all vaccines don't contain mercury anymore. Secondly, when they do contain mercury, they contain a form of mercury that's not elemental mercury, that processes from the system much faster. And third of all, the amount of mercury in the very few vaccines that has mercury is about equivalent to that in a can of tuna. So if you drop a can of tuna on the floor of the supermarket, are you calling the hazmat team? The answer is no. And it goes on and on and on. And yet another god of the MMA space, Joe Rogan, is just proven to be such a shit human being. And so his epistemology, his way of determining what's true in the world, is either completely broken or completely skewed because of his financial interests, having made many, many, many millions of dollars with his Unilever deal, selling his bullshit brand of Alpha Brain to Unilever, and then making it was hundreds of millions of dollars with his deal with Spotify, which just got renewed for more money. So yeah, he's just a common man who's got $500 million in the bank. And clearly that's not going to influence his politics at all. He's not going to side with the oligarchs now that he is essentially an oligarch.
And this is one of the things that I try and do to build bridges with my more conservative friends, and even some of the people that voted for Trump, is the corruption issue. You mentioned the oligarchs. I'm going to say something that is not a partisan statement, and it's going to sound like it at first, but if you're listening to this just listen to the whole thing. This is the most corrupt administration in American history, and I think the facts just bear that out. And I'm not just talking about corrupt humans. I'm talking about the things that they've done as a matter of policy just in the first 2 months. On the first day, they legalized major gifts from lobbyists to executive branch officials, which effectively legalized bribery. If you think that I'm exaggerating, when I say they effectively legalized bribery, if you look at some of the pardons that have come down, a pardon came down for the guy who was convicted of defrauding investors for his electric truck company. This guy had not ever given a political contribution until last year, when he suddenly donated more than $1 million, and now he has a pardon. Before, we had a president in the U.S., Jimmy Carter, who had a peanut farm. He put the peanut farm in a blind trust, not only so he wouldn't make money off the policy he made, so he wouldn't be perceived as making money off of the policy he made. But Trump yesterday touted his new cryptocurrency, and the cryptocurrency value shot up because it's free advertising from the President of the United States. A nonpartisan watchdog group identified more than 3,500 financial conflicts of interest just with Trump, not even with the rest of the executive branch staff. We don't know how many conflicts of interest there are with the rest of the executive branch staff because they stopped requiring background checks. They stopped requiring security clearances. They shifted the way they do security clearances. And so you don't even know who these folks are in the way that you did before. And here's where we get to the nonpartisan part. One of the most corrupt American politicians in history was Rod Blagojevich. He's a Democrat. Rod Blagojevich literally offered to sell a U.S. Senate seat. He had the power to appoint a U.S. senator because he was the governor. And he was caught on tape offering to sell a Senate seat to the highest bidder, which is, if there is a higher than 10 on the 10 out of 10 corruption scale, that's it. Trump pardoned him. Another corrupt Democrat, the mayor of an alleged corrupt Democrat, Eric Adams, the mayor of New York, he was allegedly taking bribes from foreign officials. Trump directed the Justice Department to stop prosecuting him. And more bipartisan stuff. The Federalist Society is an arch-conservative organization that has been feeding our Supreme Court for years. The prosecutor in that district, who was a Federalist Society person who clerked for Scalia, a far-right justice, resigned simply because of the corrupt nature of the decision to withdraw prosecution from Eric Adams, who everybody, he hasn't been convicted of corruption yet. But, there's a lot of smoke and a lot of fire. And this brings you back to the oligarchs. And Stephan, I apologize for going off on a long rant, but the oligarchs piece made me think of this. You shouldn't be able... Here's something that I think. I think that we should help people who need help. I think that if you need asylum, if you are in danger because of your racial identity or sexual identity or your political views, then that is what asylum is for here in America. And you shouldn't be able to buy citizenship. Trump now has a program, and he's selling access to himself for $5 million an hour, which sounds like I made it up, but I didn't. And he's offering to sell citizenship now with golden visas. And somebody asked him, what about Russian oligarchs? And he said, yeah, I know some Russian oligarchs that are very nice people. And so if you are a gay person who could be executed for your identity, or if you are a labor union organizer, or if you are a person with the wrong tattoos and a gang thinks you're on the wrong side and you're fleeing, you can't get in. But if you got $5 million,
you're in.
Yeah, and no matter what your politics are, from right libertarian, left authoritarian, right authoritarian, wherever you fall, that's corruption. And it's wrong, and we all know it's wrong. See,
Jeff, what about Hunter Biden's laptop and the Biden crime family?
What's hilarious?
So let me cut in for a second, because I also, just to set the stage, because I think what Jeff's saying is really important, but for those of you that have been paying attention to keeping track of the Supreme Court, last year, they threw out a case that essentially, as a result, castrated most corruption, bribery, fraud laws involved with government officials. Just the most kind of blatant examples of bribery and fraud have essentially become legalized. So the stage got set even before this new Trump term even started.
Yeah, and like the thing is, if you show me what you do, I'll show you who you are. Because you do hear things like Hillary Clinton's emails, Hunter Biden's laptop. I think any public official that, where there's credible evidence, where they're accused of wrongdoing, all of them should go through the due process to find out if they did something wrong. And if they did something wrong, they should be held accountable to the fullest extent of the law, full stop, right? Doesn't matter. But if you show me what you do, I'll show you who you are. And so if you eliminate ethics laws and you eliminate things that are barriers to fraud, if you eliminate things that are barriers to financial crime, if you hire people that are convicted felons who, in Trump's case, falsified business records so he could pay off a porn star, or in Elon's case, a dude who abetted cyber criminals, and you eliminate the laws that would allow us to prosecute those people, or you fire the auditors whose job it is to track those people's malfeasance. If you show me what you do, I'll show you who you are. One last thing about Hunter Biden, right? Like, I don't have a dog in the Hunter Biden hunt, right? I don't think most people in America, left, right, really, really care about Hunter Biden. I think the evidence indicates that kind of a messed up, troubled dude, right? And I think that like the politics of personal destruction. Let me take a step back and make a point about accountability. We had a person that I had to ask to leave the academy. And I asked this person to leave the academy because they had taken liberties in a role. They had beaten up somebody that was just out of our intro class, and they had been pretty rough with this person. And I thought it was inappropriate. And I had a conversation with them. And the person's first reaction was, hey, there's a lot of people here that are rough. And I'm like, okay, the fact that you did this thing, I think is bad. And we were going to have a conversation about that. But the fact that your first response is, hey, that other guy, and you're not even hearing, like, maybe you did something wrong. And a thing that I was telling my friends on the other side of the aisle is like, okay, when's the last time these guys took responsibility for anything? Right? Like, has anybody resigned? Has anybody faced even like recrimination for making huge errors? Like, we all make errors, right? And sometimes those errors are errors of omission, errors of commission. Sometimes those errors are you're a bad dude and you did something wrong on purpose. Sometimes you just mess up. It's fine. But if you can't point to a situation where they take responsibility and say, okay, I did something wrong, I'm going to try to do better. It's all you need. It's all you need to know.
No, you had mentioned something when you started this train of thought. You'd mentioned something about talking to your friends on the other side of the aisle, people that you even know voted for the current administration. Does talking about accountability resonate with them like that?
So, I mean, every person's an individual. I would say that I haven't found a magic bullet that makes inroads. I'm the person that always looks for the win-win, and I always look for the common ground. And no matter what your politics are, everybody messes up, everybody makes mistakes, and everybody should try to improve for those mistakes. And so I think accountability is a good bridge to build. And everybody is or should be against corruption, which, back to Jesse's point about if might makes right, why should we care about corruption, right? I got mine, screw you. And that's not a society I'm interested in living in. It's certainly not a society I'm interested in creating. The thing where I've had a little more success, and it's strange to even bring up, but like I make bets where like we got in an argument about tariffs, and I was like, look, man, no economist really thinks this is going to work. Like left, right, I read them all. I read left, right, center, libertarian think tanks. Everybody thinks this is a terrible, terrible unforced error. And we go back and forth, and they hear me out, I hear them out. And finally, what I've been doing is I just said, look, I'm tired of arguing. I will bet you a significant amount of money that there are fewer jobs when Trump leaves, if he leaves, than when he came in. And I will bet that the deficit is much, much, much bigger. I've talked to probably 5 people with this talking point, and nobody's taken me up on it. I can't tell you that has created an inroad, but it feels like I think when we argue, and this is something as somebody that did college debate for a long time, I think humans are a little bit tribal, and we all get in our camps. And often, I think this is why arguing on the internet is often unproductive, is that we get into, no, I'm going to look for what supports my view. You're going to look what supports your view. We're going to talk past each other. And so I think like rupturing that frame and just being like, okay, man, if you believe this so much, how about we just make a bet? And, I can't tell you that that's working great yet, but it's definitely made people stop and think like, okay, I'm not actually willing to do that. And I'm like, why do you think that is? And that leads me to talking about like investors, right? I'm sorry to be monopolizing the discussion, guys. It's been a busy week, but a lot of y'all know who are on the call know we've been trying to buy a building for Bellingham BJJ. We have some money saved. We're pre-approved at an amount that should allow us to buy a really cool commercial building. And we found an awesome one. And we're to the point where we're going to make an offer. As you all know, in America, bankers are all Marxists. They've been propagandizing with the Marxism. They're woke. EI tattooed on their foreheads. It's wild, these bankers. And so I have a business coach and also business coaches, communists, all of them, right? And so I talked to 3 bankers and our business coach, and they're all like, the investment environment is too unstable for you to do this. So and if you look at the stock market, and this is sort of the reason I'm mentioning this in relation to the bet is, what I tell my friends is like, look, investors are betting. They're betting this is going to go bad because they're not investing. And the bankers, they're betting this is going to go bad because they're like, look, if we thought that there was any stability, we'd give you this money and we feel like we'd both make money. But in this time, if we give you money, we're both going to lose money. Whenever the brave people get scared, I get scared. Whenever the people that care the most about finances are like, it's not the time for finances, I'm like, okay, we've made a mistake.
Good luck in collecting that money if you end up in the winning conditions. You know, that quote about it's like playing chess with a pigeon, that they knock over all the pieces, then shit on the board and declare themselves the victor. There'll be some yeah, but, or what about, or dude, he died of a heart attack that was actually caused by the deep state. That doesn't count. He died, there was 6 months left in his term, and therefore it was just about to turn around and be wonderful.
No,
I'm not paying you.
No, there'll be lots of. That's why if anyone is listening that does want to take me up on this, I'm willing to put a substantial amount of money in escrow with a mutually trusted person. I mean, I feel like that's fair. Anyway, I'll stop with the degenerate gambling.
Did anyone follow the Cain Velasquez story in the
I did
last
a little bit.
week? So what's going on there?
So Cain Velasquez, it was the former UFC champion, one of the best UFC heavyweights ever. And I may get some details wrong because I haven't followed this closely, but Cain was convicted because there was apparently a young relative of Cain's that had a man around him who had been convicted of sex crimes against children. And Cain thought, this is my understanding, again, I could be wrong, Cain thought this dude was doing some really unspeakable things to his young relative, tried to attack the dude, and what I think the detail that most people who are in the community, a lot of whom are really upset that Cain has to go to jail, have missed is Cain got in his car, followed this guy into traffic, and was shooting at this guy from his car in rush hour traffic. And, I have a hunch where you're going with this, Stephan, but that's the story as I understand it. Guys, did I get anything wrong?
Well, no, I mean, I will add, he hit an innocent bystander while he was shooting. He didn't even shoot the guy he was intending to shoot.
Yeah.
He hit an innocent bystander, which I think is a very important detail. I mean, I think the thing that really surprised me, and I guess it maybe was because people weren't paying enough attention to the details, is seeing, the sentencing and, hey, Cain's going to jail. And then the next day on my Facebook feed, all of these BJJ and MMA gyms and associated characters with, hashtag free Cain, all of this nonsense. And, there are some days that I'm as in favor of getting rid of child molesters as the next guy. But this situation where you start just shooting into traffic and then hitting innocent bystanders, this requires a level of accountability that I think people just aren't really paying close attention to.
Well, we're probably going to get pegged as 4 liberal black belts who are in favor of child predators. But do we really want to live in a world where I thought he was molesting my cousin is a get out of jail free card for just attacking somebody, right? I mean,
Yeah. And Stephan,
it's totally understandable on the small scale, but if we play this out across society, just imagine the carnage that as soon as somebody invokes that, it's a free pass and they can run around and just start shooting people or beating somebody to death with a baseball bat. There's people who've in the community who've made a lot of hay about how much they hate child predators. And I totally agree with them. Child predators are the scum of the earth. Let's play this forward and look at the consequences of open season on all accused predators. And there's going to be people running around is going to make the Wild West look peaceful.
I mean,
Yeah, and you end up, sending an immigrant with a autism awareness tattoo down to an Salvadoran concentration camp accusing them of being a Venezuelan gang member, right? Like you just throw accusations at the wall and, they stick. And yeah, I mean, it's a problem. I remember during COVID, and, I feel like it's not been getting talked about, but does everybody remember around the COVID time, the whole Save the Children campaign that, you saw a lot of your right-wing friends?
And just generally well-meaning people.
Yeah.
Right.
For sure. But there certainly seemed to be something a little more sinister behind a lot of that activity. And you don't see that level of fervor around.
Save the immigrant children.
Yeah, or even child predators or sexual predators just in the right side of the political spectrum, right?
Y'all know who Denny Hastert is?
No.
Denny Hastert was the Speaker of the House of Representatives, the Republican Speaker of the House. He went to jail because he molested like 36 kids, and somehow it just went down the memory hole. And I'll go further than I'm against child molestation. I think generally exploitation of children is wrong. I think society needs to do a lot more to protect kids. I think there was a visceral, emotional response to violent crime, especially violent sexual crime. It's why stranger rape gets talked about in terms of sexual assault as this really stranger jumps out at you from a dark alley. And it happens. Doesn't happen nearly as much as intimate partner violence or with someone
Correct.
that no, right? But it's more like it's that instant like, oh my God, that's horrible. And so like, yes, we as a society need to address our failures in terms of protecting kids. But we need to protect kids on the front end as well as on the back end. We need to, have legal structures that stop kids from being in positions where they can be exploited. And like you guys alluded to as well. I mean, U.S. citizen children, we should protect. Non-U.S. citizen children, we should protect. There's not a difference to me.
Right. I mean, there's almost this like hero fantasy admiring the strongman, this hero fantasy that somebody is going to save the kid from the child molester by, shooting the accused child molester in rush hour traffic, right? Or,
Well, that was part of the whole QAnon nonsense too, right?
Right.
The
Right.
offshore facilities that were draining children of
I mean, Pizzagate.
whatever strange. Yeah,
Yeah.
Pizzagate, exactly.
Yeah. But like the same people that have that hero fantasy, and again, I'm with the four of us, like children need to be protected. But those same people don't want to fund free school lunches for kids, because that's socialism. So it makes no logical sense. And I think that it's that kind of like playing up that hero fantasy is another tool to get people indoctrinated into that far right way of thinking.
Well, let's be clear. I'm not sure that they want to publicly educate them at all. Forget the free lunch, right? I think we're kind of beyond that at this point. We're dismantling every support structure that, we kind of had in place for children, Medicaid, the Department of Education, on and on and on and on and on. Not only here, but at home with the USAID stuff. So it's pretty disingenuous, quite frankly.
I think it's pretty clear in retrospect that Save the Children thing was kind of the soft pitch for the QAnon Pizzagate people, right? Who could be against Save the Children? But when you look at that, that's the number of kids reported missing. So if your daughter is late from school and you call the cop and say, hey, I don't know where my daughter is, when you subtract all of the kids who are late coming home from school, and, quite a few abductions are usually the father grabbing the kids and running. I'm not saying that's right, or the father being late to return the kids in a custody dispute. It's a vanishingly small number of truly terrible incidents. So, yeah, I mean, that number that was being thrown around uncritically was vastly inflated.
I think Mike's really onto something with the hero fantasy, right? And look, I love comic books. I'll talk about comics all day long.
Oh, Batman's my jam.
That's what I'm talking about, right? If I didn't have my blur thing on, I'd show you some of my comics. But like, incidentally, didn't think that the best book I read all year would be Snagglepuss. but I did. They rebooted Snagglepuss. It's awesome. If you look back at Western storytelling, right? The noble hero fighting against all odds, against the terrible crime, right? And you can insert, it's almost like a Mad Lib where you insert that into a formula. And so I really do get it. I get the, hey, I want to do something meaningful. I want to do something powerful. What's more meaningful or powerful than saving a kid, protecting a woman from being raped, putting myself at physical risk in order to run into a burning building, right? And that's powerful because those are noble acts. The thing is, for every complex problem, there's a simple, obvious solution that's wildly wrong and counterproductive, right? And if you really want to protect kids, you don't drive into traffic shooting at randos, right? Because you're going to generally cause more harm than good. To loop this back to the Cain Velasquez thing, one really important person that doesn't think Cain should be freed? Cain. And my respect for Cain, and I don't know the dude, I know some people that know him, but like, if you saw Cain's statement, he was like, look, I broke the law. I accept responsibility. I did what I did. And whatever the court deems appropriate, I will accept. And, it says a lot that like, that stands out in this political environment to be like, I accept accountability for my actions that endangered others. But it's like, and I truly believe to give a little slack to some of the people that are out posting these memes, I think most of those don't know the facts of the case that we were talking about. I think they just think, well, Cain went after somebody that did a horrible thing, like Batman would have. That's not really what happened. And I think that Cain realizes that, and I think more people in the MMA community should realize that.
I like your point about for every complex problem, there's a simple solution that's completely wrong. I remember watching MMA with a coworker of mine, and one of the fighters is on the bottom of mount, just getting pounded, and my coworker, who was a fan of the guy on the bottom, is yelling, just stand up, just stand up. That would be a simple solution to a complex problem. Getting out of mount when you're getting punched in the head is a complex problem. Just standing up is the obvious simple solution. And if you're completely uneducated in that area, you don't have all the facts, that simple solution seems pretty reasonable.
Totally. Well, I would simply refuse to be punched in the face.
I would just see red, bro.
One of my favorite pieces of advice that an opposing coach has given an opponent of mine while I was grappling. This was amazing. And like, both these dudes are good dudes, so I'm not going to get into the details, but I was a purple belt and I was grappling somebody, and the person's instructor was off coaching somebody else. So another purple belt was coaching him. The guy might even have been a blue belt at the time. I'm not sure. And so I hit a berimbolo, because berimbolos don't work. It was 2013 or something, so it still worked. But it's an old school technique, the berimbolo. Yeah. Incidentally, one of my students the other day was like, man, I love the old school jiu-jitsu. Man, Rafael Mendez was amazing. And I turned into dust. But so I berimbolo this dude, I take his back, and I sink in the choke, and I have it like, I've got it, right? And I sink it in. And his coach shouts, don't accept that. And I'm like, man, it's happened. Accepts it or not, and I almost said thanks. Now he's a smart fighter.
Oh my god!
I would simply refuse to be choked.
Yeah, I've been doing jiu-jitsu wrong this whole time.
You should have just not accepted it, right?
Well,
nope.
I'll know for the future.
In fairness to that guy, the Meows had a lot of success with that strategy.
Yeah, but can they walk now?
I mean, define walk.
Right. I've seen the photos of those knees. Those don't look like good knees.
Dude, so I actually trained with the Meows quite a bit when I was at Unity for a while. I love those dudes. Have a ton of respect for them. Like, everybody at Unity, fucking awesome. And a heckin' awesome, darn awesome. And look, I'm a 50-year-old dude. And like, the thing that's amazing about them, two things are amazing about them, other than their jiu-jitsu, which is amazing. The first is that when we get done training and they walk, like, I walk more fluidly than those dudes do, and they're like 20 years younger than me. And the second thing is, once they get on the mat, it just doesn't matter. They're as absolutely fluid, and like, you would never know any of them had an injury once they roll. I don't know how that works. It works.
Definitely doesn't work for me.
Nor I.
Just don't accept aging, Mike.
Age is just a number. It's a meaningful number.
So is there any other topics related to the last week that we should quickly address?
I mean, so much happens so fast. I have a hard time keeping track of what happened last month or last week anymore. I mean, the Tate brothers left did they leave the US again?
Yeah, they went back
After being welcomed by Dana White to the United States.
Captain Ellis Island himself.
Give me your poor, huddled rapists yearning to breathe free.
You know, like, yeah. Do you all remember Tippy? Draw Tippy? So there used to be this mail order art. I'll send you the link. We can put it in the show notes. Mike, do you know what I'm talking about?
I do.
Please. Okay, amazing. So it's wild to me that Andrew Tate, like the dude who looks like Tippy the Turtle from the old Draw Tippy, has become like a cause celebre. I'm like, dude, you have the weakest chin ever. You have like, it's the opposite of a chin. It's like the inverse of a 5 head, which is a forehead just with extra. It's a big forehead. He has no chin. It's like someone has amputated his chin. It's wild. He looks like Tippy the Turtle.
I saw a meme comparing a photo of him, I think, getting arrested in Romania to Gollum. And I was like, oh my God, that's it?
That's an insult to Smeagol, who once was a wholesome creature.
I know.
But it is amazing that somebody who is facing charges of human trafficking, rape, assault, etc. in Romania, and after he's done there is facing charges of the same in the UK, and is now facing charges in Florida. I'm not sure what the charges in Florida are. I'm assuming they're related to this. Is the cause celebre. Like, what the fuck is wrong with society?
Save the children people now. I mean, that's what I mean. It's so disingenuous.
Yeah.
Right.
He's innocent till proven guilty, reluctantly.
Well,
But
so was the
what
guy
about
that Cain Velasquez shot at.
Sure, but let's ignore all the charges. All the charges get dismissed. Just look at the things that he says.
Yeah.
You know, talking about bitches and hoes, and you got to smack them around. And so even irrespective of the legal stuff, the stuff he's said verbally, that there's documented video evidence, should be disqualifying in and of itself.
I mean, all that's okay, supposedly, right? But then we have to worry about the 10-some trans female athletes in the NCAA, right? Like 10 trans female athletes, and we have to protect the 50,000 other athletes from them, but Tate can spout misogynistic bullshit, and Dana White hugs him and gives him a reach around almost when...
It's crazy.
Wife beater Dana White.
Correct.
You know, the thing that's interesting to me, and this is something I've never met Tom DeBlass, and I would love to have a conversation with Tom about this because, I see Tom talk about anti-bullying, and I believe it's heartfelt. Like, I don't know him. I've never met the dude personally. It comes off as heartfelt. The dude hates bullies, and I love that. I too hate bullies. I don't know if he said anything about the Tate situation, so I apologize if that gets conflated. But I think a lot of folks that I think are well-intentioned about anti-bullying don't see social power in those terms, right? Because the women that Andrew Tate attacks, the women that Andrew Tate allegedly trafficked, or even the women that Andrew Tate just excoriates and dehumanizes and shits on the internet, those are the people without the power. Those are the people that are being bullied by a dude with a huge platform, with considerable wealth, for no reason.
And tons of fanboys who'll take up the crusade.
That I just yes, and I don't understand any of that. And it's if you want to be a hero, if you want to be the lone hero that would fight against the weak person being attacked by the strong person, there is a good target for you. Andrew Tate was a kickboxer. He can probably handle himself.
But I mean, I think Tom DeBlass is a really great example of the might makes right thing. Circle it back again, right? What does he do when the argument stops going his way? He gives out his address.
Yeah.
Come fight me about it. And it's really? That's how we're dealing with it. All right. That's fine.
Yeah, it's not charming.
Not in the least.
I would love to meet him and have a conversation with him about it, though, because I feel like social media, I love internet technology and I love communication. I'm not convinced social media is great for society. We can't really put the genie back in the bottle, but I really wonder how many folks, I've met people in jiu-jitsu that are exactly as they appear on social media, and it's oh no, that's you. And then I've met other people, some of whom sell quick flip hoodies that are dramatically from how they appear on social media. And so, like, I try not to, judge folk until I've really talked to them and figured out where they're coming from. But, although we're all responsible for what we put out in the world, like with the social media content we put out in the world, I do tend to respect authenticity, though. And I would rather just know, like, okay, that is that guy. That is who that guy is. And you're going to get that on Instagram. You're going to get that in person. And there's no duplicity, right? So,
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that's right.
You're also not going to be seeing the real person because all of us are white guys, white male, right? So if that person is, say, misogynist, you're not going to see that aspect. They might be entirely nice to you. You're also not black. You're also not Venezuelan looking.
dude,
Whether that's Latino or Persian, you're basically an honorary Venezuelan until proven differently.
that is such a valid point and such an important point. And like, people hate to hear the term privilege, and it's because it's kind of been weaponized. But like, if you hear privilege and you get your backup about privilege, just think about power, right? And think about, like, those of us that have more power have a responsibility to protect folks that don't, or at least not fuck with people that don't. And can I tell you guys one story about something that happened in my academy to that end, to Stephan's point? So there was a young lady in my academy who was dating a dude who had trained jujitsu but hadn't trained at my place. And he came and trained at my place once when they were dating, and it was fine. He seemed perfectly nice. This young man ends up stalking this woman. He didn't train at my gym again, but she's, thankfully we had the kind of relationship where she could be like, hey, I told this guy I didn't want to see him anymore, but I'm kind of afraid, and he says he's coming over, and I'm telling him not to come over, but he says he's coming over. And I'm like, no, he's not. I'm like, hey, have you told him not to come? She's like, yeah, sends me the text messages. I was like, what can I do? She's like, come over. I'm like, I'm on my way, and I'm going to message him. And so I messaged this guy, and I'm like, hey, man, so-and-so says I'm not trying to get involved, but I am involved now. And she says she don't want you to come over. And he's like, oh, hey, it's great to talk to you. Good to see you. I'm like, this isn't about that. I was like, are you coming over? He was like, well, yeah, I think there might have been a misunderstanding, and I'm over here right now. And I'm like, I'm on my way over. And when I'm there, you'd better not be there. And I'm not trying to make myself up talk any type of way about myself. That's not the point of this. The point of this is, and this, I think, a lesson for all of us that are, to Stephan's point, white male dudes that are like fighty type dudes. This dude texts this young woman and is like, I'm only leaving out of respect for Jeff. I'm like, you met me once.
Unbelievable.
No, I'm like, you met me one time. And you have this much respect for this person that you've dated that you're like, okay, but if your jiu-jitsu coach says I gotta leave.
So he won't leave for her, but he'll leave out of respect for you.
Right? And it's like, you guys actually had a relationship. And for, like, I don't know how long, they didn't date for long, but like, it was longer than one jiu-jitsu class.
Oh my God. I mean, right there is a perfect example of like power and privilege, right? Like you just said, like you're a white dude that is proficient. I had a college professor once say something about, because I was a martial artist all my life, say something about, oh, you're proficient at violence. And I'm like, what? That's not how I think about it. But you're a white guy's proficient at violence, right? So he's going to leave when you're showing up, but not when she says to leave. That's crazy.
I know the spirit in which you intend that, and I concur with it wholeheartedly. And I think the lesson for me is like, there's doing the right thing and having the power to enforce the right thing. And they're not always the same, right? And so you hope people have some sense to act right. And you got to have the power to enforce it if they decide not to act right.
Right.
Yeah.
Somebody that I know in the local LGBTQ community said to me recently something that I thought was very powerful. A couple different things. They said, number one, if you're going to be an ally, you have to be willing to put your body on the line. Like, you can't just be a performative ally saying, I'm here for you, I'm with you, but not show up at events, not be, not stand up to harassment in the community if you witness it or whatever. And then they said, and you're not an ally until we tell you you're an ally. I don't know. Your story made me think of that for some reason. I don't know why, but I mean, and I think that's what we have to do like with this conversation, and we have to. One of the things I've been trying to do personally is encourage other people to speak out, or like just by me speaking out, being an example to let other people know that you're not alone. And if you want to speak out about the kind of stuff that's going on, we've got your back. Right. So if you want to be a hero, do something like that. Open fire in rush hour traffic, or, and by the way, I hadn't heard that about Cain Velasquez. That makes me feel really good that he's taking responsibility. But like, that's how you're a hero, I think. If you want to live up to this, like this hero standard or whatever, do that. Don't do all the other performative macho BS stuff. Right. Go to a protest.
Don't talk about it, be about it.
Right.
That's right.
I think in interest of keeping this manageable for consumption and also to leave something on the table for next time, we should probably call it. Is there anything else that we really need to get off our chest today, or is that for next time?
Now, I got to teach a private lesson in 15 minutes anyway, but it's awesome talking to you guys.
Yeah, you guys are amazing. I appreciate all of you.
Yeah, thanks
Take care.
everybody.
See you, boys.
Adios, amigo.